Hello, today is Monday, May the 16th, and we're reading four passages in the Bible: 2 Samuel 6, 1 Chronicles 13, Psalm 60, and Acts 23. Now the 2 Samuel and the 1 Chronicles passage, it's actually the same event. It's an event that happens when David, now the king, is bringing the Ark of the Covenant back to where it belongs. It's been taken and lost, they've discovered, they've refound it, and they're bringing it back home. Now, if you read through the Old Testament law with us, then you know that there are rules and there are ways that you are required to transport the ark. It must be carried on the shoulders of Levites on these poles, and there's this whole system for transporting the Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament. Well, here in 2 Samuel and in 1 Chronicles 13, we find out that David doesn't do it that way. If you recall also, you know that the king before David, King Saul, he was punished. God took the kingdom away from him because Saul rejected the ways of God and did things his own way. And now we find David here in this kind of weird event that happens in 2 Samuel 6, 1 Chronicles 13, doing somewhat the same thing. He's rejecting the way God says to transport the Ark of the Covenant, to do it in a more expedient way. It says they put the Ark on a new cart and they're guiding it along the way back home. Well, along the way, one of the oxen that's pulling the cart stumbles, and the cart tips a little bit. The ark starts to slide off of the cart, and a man named Uzzah, who's right there, Uzzah doesn't want the Ark of the Covenant to touch the ground. He doesn't want it to fall, and so he merely reaches out his hand and he catches it. He just catches the ark and pushes it back up there. Now, because though there are some strict guidelines and rules and law about how the ark should be transported, that men that aren't Levites should not transport it, men that aren't Levites shouldn't touch it, all these things happen. Uzzah, because he's not a Levite, and because the ark's being transported wrong, when he touches it, he immediately dies. And we read that, and we say, well, that's just a weird passage. But we have to remember that God gives us his word for a reason. And just like Saul, and just like David, you and I have the choice that we can honor what God says, or we can reject God's ways and do things our own way. Now, some of the Old Testament laws that were there, I think we aren't living under any longer. Some of the dietary things, some of the things that are in there. There's so much in the Word of God we are living under. Things like love your neighbor, pray for your enemy, serve the people around you, offer an embrace instead of a rebuke to people that you pass. Some of these things we do live under. But how often have you and I, just like Saul and just like David, we have rejected what God says to do things our own way? This is why Jesus, in the Sermon on the Mount, he talked to the people on the side of the mountain, and he told them things like, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye. But I tell you that you should turn the other cheek. See, Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount, some of those passages, he was returning what the people thought they knew. The rejection of God's way to embrace their own way. He was returning the people's mind back to what God had said to do. Love your enemy, pray for those who persecute you, serve your neighbors, love people as yourself, take care of others. Our product is people. We always focus on people. He was bringing us back to that point right there. I want to encourage you today, as you go to work, as you go to school, as you go about your life, I want to encourage you in this. Don't reject the way of God in whatever it is. Now, probably you're not walking along a new cart that's carrying the Ark of the Covenant with you, but you are walking among people. You are walking through neighborhoods. You are driving around school buildings. You are going places. Don't reject the way God said to live, to do things your own way. Because if you do, there's always a consequence. Always a consequence. When we follow Jesus, we surrender everything that we are to him. We put our ways down and we pick his ways up. Today, make a conscious commitment that you are going to live in the ways of God. The only way you will ever learn the ways of God is by reading his word. So today, spend time reading his word. Spend time considering the ways he called you to live. and then go and honor who God called you to be. And I guarantee your life will be better if you reject God's ways. Until I see you again, you are sent.